We thought of it as being a waste. What we've done has been to change the light environment radically over the last roughly 50 years, since the invention of the fluorescent tube and subsequently the invention of the white LED. We have radically changed the light environment. Before then, basically all the light sources available to us were what we call thermal sources. That is, they emitted thermal radiation, blank spectrum. The sun, fires, oil lamps, candles, gas lamps, they were all thermal sources. So they were all emitting strongly in the near infrared as well as in the visible. In fact, the problem with all these light sources was to make enough visible light without making too much infrared light, because a lot of the energy was going into making infrared light. And so there was a historical drive to get away from, say, the Edison light bulb, which, was ubiquitous for making light inside buildings, but of course used most of its energy making infrared light, which was not visible light. And so we wanted to get rid of the tungsten filament bulb.
We were thinking about it as a waste because we didn't realize we were using it.
It was a waste, yes. We thought of it as being a waste. That turned out to be a big mistake. But
yeah.
So, we got to the white LED. We're driven by a blue LED, which won the Nobel Prize in, what was it? And so we honed these lights to produce visible light only and produce no shorter wavelength and no longer wavelength, just inside the visible spectrum. But that coincided with a very slow process in what I would call the decay in public health. Public health has, in some senses improved, in some senses it's decayed, but it has decayed significantly over the last few decades. And I think the rate of increase in lifespan has slowed pretty much to zero now, and a lot of people are getting sick, and we've got a huge explosion in type 2 diabetes and obesity and other diseases of aging. So this was the clue that we saw to the relevance of non-visible light to human health, or to the health of the whole biosphere, in fact. So what we've actually done has been far more dramatic than just changing the light bulbs. We've actually, because we're building glass-coated buildings now, we've changed the windows so that the windows also only allow visible light into the buildings. So we end up with white LEDs in rooms and buildings, with windows that are only letting from the outdoor environment, are only letting
Obviously, we see with visible light, but our bodies use other forms of light, and we overlooked that.
We overlooked that, yes. And, it turns out, I believe, to be one of our biggest mistakes. And now we have people spending the majority of their time, many people spend the majority of their time within the built environment, and they're getting sick. We had the famous case of the astronauts on the space station who came back with very poor health. And the analysis of the paper in Cell in 2022, whenever it was, showed that the common feature of the astronauts and all the experimental animals they sent up to the space station, they all came back with mitochondrial dysfunction.
Mitochondrial dysfunction. So they were in a impoverished light environment. The environment differed in other ways as well.
That was our proposal. In fact, the Gaia Foundation wrote a long report about space health and sent it all to all the space agencies a few months ago now, where one of the factors in there are many factors in there, microgravity and ionizing radiation and all those things, but one was to do with non-ionizing radiation, i.e. the light environment. And of course, these guys are sitting in a tin can lit by white LEDs. I mean, they changed the lighting in 2012. They changed it from a mixture between fluorescent tubes and I think tungsten filaments in 2012 to all LEDs. I mean, they introduced the circadian variation in color and brightness, but they're still all LEDs, and so they're completely infrared dark. So there's no infrared in the space station at all. And so they were living in a completely infrared starved environment for many months, and I think this happens in other infrared starved environments as well. And I'm sure if you looked at submariners, you'd find they came back sick. We don't know about this because we're not told, but I think these light starved environments, and the symptoms actually are very like scurvy. I mean, scurvy was the absence of vitamin C. I call this 21st century scurvy. It has symptoms which are very similar to vitamin C. The symptoms develop over timescales of months and years, not immediately. But all the diseases of aging are determined essentially by the mitochondrial function. And when you destroy or slow the mitochondrial function, you increase the rate of aging, and you reduce the metabolic efficiency of the life. So, our view is that this is, there are many causes of obesity and type 2 diabetes, and junk food being not the least of them. But I think a primary cause of this is the light environment.
What you're saying is a major contributor to mitochondrial dysfunction, which is going to underlie all kinds of things from metabolic diseases to aging itself, is an artificial light environment with a lot of emphasis on a lack of sufficient near-infrared light, which the whole planet we are now depriving ourselves of.